Good morning. It's good to be here with you this morning. As some of you know, every year I go hiking on the Appalachian Trail. I pick up where I left off the previous year, and we keep going and try to get a little bit closer towards the end. And if you don't know anything about the Appalachian Trail, it's about 2,200 miles long. It goes all the way from Georgia up to Maine. And some parts of it are really, really fun, and other parts are really, really brutal. And along the way, if you do the whole thing, you will have hiked the equivalent of vertical climb of going a little more than 90 miles up. That's pretty far out there. Now, it's not all at once. It's usually in 1,000 or 2,000 feet stretches, but it's enough that your feet and your legs and your whole body can quickly hate you, especially when you're carrying the weight with you of everything you've brought. One of the things I love about hiking on the trail is the time with the people I go with, but also the people I meet. If you've never hiked on the AT, you may not know this. There's this whole weird community of people who are obsessed with the AT. That is their life. Not only hiking it, some people, one guy we met this year has now hiked it 5 times. 2,200 miles, 5 different times. That's all he does, it seems. Not only do people hike it a bunch, but there's this community of people that spend their lives just simply creating hostels and safe places and shuttles and all kinds of opportunities to help those who are hiking it experience the journey even better. Well, last year when we got off the trail, we spent the night at a hostel before coming back, mostly because if we didn't take a shower before coming back, my wife would not have let me come back. But we stayed at a hostel, and while we were there, we met this lady named Betty. And Betty was legendary. She was incredible. In fact, on the trail, one of the things about this trail community is they give people nicknames, and Betty along the way had earned the nickname from a Boy Scout group she came across, Betty the Legend. And it fits. See, Betty was attempting last year to hike the entire AT for the 3rd time. Now, the first time she tried to hike it, she made it a really good ways with a friend, and then her friend got injured and had to leave the trail. And she decided, I'll press on and do this on my own. And then she got a little thing called Lyme disease. I don't know if you've heard about that. And she hiked over 100 miles with no memory of the hike because of what Lyme disease was doing to her, and she had no idea she was sick until she came across somebody who was just out for a day hike who said, "Ma'am, something's not right. Can I take you to a doctor?" So the first time she tried, she didn't succeed, so she decided to try again. Well, her friend who had gotten injured the first time didn't recover very well, and so the second time she tried to go, he was still not fully recovered, so she said, I'll just do it alone this time. And again, she made it over halfway, and then she fell and broke her hip and had to hike 20 miles out before she could get to help. And if that were me, I would have taken that as a sign, I think I'm done. In fact, this week alone, my foot was hurting, and I was like, I'm going to call it quits, guys. I'll call a shuttle. And I left a day early, and I'm glad I did because it hurt. I can't imagine a broken hip in 20 miles. That would be impossible. And Betty decided that wasn't enough. She was going to do this. She would finish this trail. And so she set out last year to do it once again. And that's where we met her. A little bit, almost 2/3 of the way through the trail, she was nearing the end. And we met her at the end of our trip as she was continuing on, and she was sore and she was tired, but she was committed. This will be the year I finish the trail. And Betty the Legend did not finish the trail last year. And she didn't because a week after we got off of our hike, this little thing called a hurricane, Helene, came through and wiped out a bunch of the trail. In fact, the Trail Conservatory was so concerned about hikers on the trail as the storm was approaching, they told all of the AT hikers, if you get off the trail right now, Next year, you can pick up where you left off, and we will count it as 1 year's through hike, because normally you have to start and finish within 12 months of each other. And they said, we want to encourage you to get off the trail because we think this storm will be really bad. So if you do, you can stop where you are and pick up there next year, and we will still count it as a through hike. And so last year, Betty, for the third time, had to stop her hike and get off the trail. And 2 weeks before we went this year, so I just got back this week. I was gone. That's why I wasn't here last Sunday. 2 weeks ago, we got a text message from Betty, the legend. She sent it to our group of guys. And it was a little video of her that I want to share with you guys. You ready? Here you go. Oh, wait. Let's do that again with sound this time. Hold on.
I'm done.
She was so excited because finally, after 3 attempts and all of this failure, she finished. But here's the thing I love that makes Betty so legendary. Not only all of the really big reasons why she should have quit, but also Betty, upon finishing the trail this year, officially became the oldest woman to ever through hike the whole thing at 80 years old. I struggle, and I'm not yet 40. And at 80, she tried not once or twice, but 3 times before she finally finished. And I love her story because she did not set out to break a record. Yeah, to hike the whole trail is a pretty phenomenal feat. Not a lot of people do it. I probably never will in my life. In fact, the pace that I'm going, it'll take me another 35 or 40 years to get there. And I just don't think I have it in me. So she set out to do something hard, but she never set out to do something nobody else had done. And along the way, as she got injured, as she got sick, as she got kicked off the trail because of storms, there could have been a whole lot of reason to quit and to say, you know what, I did enough, I made it far enough, it's good enough. But she persevered, and she pressed on. And through all of the interruptions and all of the distractions and all of the things that were outside of her control, she managed to do something nobody else has ever done. And I love that about her. In many ways, our Christian life is like Betty the legend. There are all kinds of distractions and all kinds of storms and all kinds of problems and trials and pains that come against us, most of which we have no control over. But most of the time, when all of those interruptions come, we find ourselves frustrated or disappointed or discouraged and ready to quit. It is difficult to persevere and keep going when life doesn't seem to work out. In fact, when I get interrupted, I can find myself all sorts of thrown off for the whole day sometimes. A couple years ago, a pastor told me, he said, you can measure the character of a man by the way he responds to interruptions. And that for me was a really painful thing because when I'm driving in traffic and somebody interrupts the flow of the speed at which I'm going, which is always a very respectable 7 to 12 miles above the speed limit, and somebody has the audacity to go the speed limit in front of me, or like 4 miles below the speed limit, how dare they? I know that when those interruptions come, be them meaningless and insignificant, it can throw off my whole day. It can throw off my whole rhythm. I can find myself irritable. And so when this pastor said this a few years ago, I was struck. What does it look like to create space in my life to be interrupted and not disturbed? To be interrupted and actually see the interruption as an invitation from God into something better, something different I hadn't even planned. What does it look like to live in such a way where there's margin in my life, where there's space that I can be interrupted and not have it throw everything off? And so I began on this personal journey to say, how do you slow down and change what matters? How do I spend my time in such a way that when it gets interrupted, I don't feel like somebody's stealing from me or breaking something or destroying something, but actually when my time gets interrupted, I can see it as God at work in the moment, either in me or in the people around me. Today, we're going to look in Scripture at a story that, I'll be honest, I have read and heard more times than I can count. But as I was preparing for today, I have struggled to read this text and not tear up. And I've never had that problem before with this specific passage. So there's a good chance I'll probably cry today, but that's pretty normal for me, so get used to it. If you'd like to follow along, we'll be in Luke chapter 8, page 10,080 in the blue Bibles in front of you, or you're welcome to use your own Bible or your phone. 10,080, Luke chapter 8. Now, when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. And there came a man named Jairus, who was a ruler of the synagogue. And falling at Jesus' feet, he implored him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter, about 12 years of age, and she was dying. I love this story as Luke records it. Jesus has been doing all kinds of ministry. He's been healing, he's been preaching, he's been casting out demons, he's been feeding the hungry, and the crowds are desperate for Jesus. We want more of you. We want more of what you're doing. We want more of what you're saying. We want everything about you. And everywhere Jesus goes, a crowd is pressing around him, is surrounding him, is eagerly waiting to just have a little bit more of his time, a little bit more of what he has to offer, just a little bit more of him. Maybe you felt that way in your life. I'm certainly not Jesus in any capacity, but there are times when it feels like everybody around me just wants something. And there's always something more that's needed, and always something more that I have to give, and always something more that's demanded of me. And Jesus is in this situation, and here comes Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue, a man with a lot of authority and importance. Now, for many of us, this is the kind of person we want to give our attention to. The people we think, well, maybe if I scratch your back, you'll scratch mine. If I help you, you'll help me. Maybe if I give something of myself to you, in return, I'll get something more. Jairus shows up, the ruler of the synagogue, and says, I am desperate. Jesus, come and heal my daughter, my only daughter. She's 12 and she's dying. I just picture the emotion of Jairus' plea. As a dad, Jesus, I need what only you can do right now. I need what only you can provide. I need something nobody else can help with. Come quickly. It's urgent. So Jesus sets off to help. As Jesus went, the people pressed around him. Again, even in this place of a pretty urgent need, a pretty important thing before him, the people still need more from him. They're still demanding and seeking and wanting more from him, even in this place of really important things before him. And there was a woman who had had a discharge of blood for 12 years. And though she had spent all her living on physicians, she could not be healed by anyone. Jesus is pressed all around by people demanding stuff from him. This important leader, this person of authority, this respectable man comes with an urgent need, and Jesus responds. And then the story takes a side note, an interruption, a distraction from the urgent and the important into something else. A woman who's been having an issue of bleeding for 12 years. Now, without being too graphic, all of you women can imagine the pain of what that may be like. 12 years of all kinds of bleeding and cramping and all kinds of pain and all kinds of questions and possibly lightheadedness and all kinds of problems. And all kinds of hurt for 12 years. And what's worse is it's not just her physical symptoms. See, the law of God demanded that any woman during her time of bleeding, any person who was actively bleeding, would have to be removed from the community for a season of time until they stopped bleeding, until they could go through their ritual cleansing, until they could be brought back into the community. And this sounds really archaic and mean, but it also makes a lot of sense. We know today that blood carries with it all kinds of potential disease. And they did not have the sanitation and the equipment and the opportunity that we have today. And so any person, man or woman who was bleeding, needed to be separated from the community to keep people safe. For a few days, that's hard. For a few months, that seems impossible. But for 12 years, this woman was isolated and alone, outcast and not welcome. In fact, by many, because she persisted in this bleeding, was probably viewed as, what's wrong with you that God would curse you like this? What did you do to deserve this? It might be your fault. For 12 years, this woman has nowhere to turn and has exhausted everything she's got, seeking all the answers and all the help and all the people and all the places everywhere, desperate for help. Jesus is on this important mission for an important person. And as he goes, there's this woman, mostly unimportant and forgotten. She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment. And immediately her discharge of blood ceased. This woman, in her hurt and in her pain, desperately needs from Jesus something only he can give. But because she wasn't welcomed in the community, wasn't to be included in the life of the people, in her guilt and her shame and her loneliness, comes up behind Jesus and just barely touches his clothes. If only I can have the littlest bit from him, that'll be enough. And when she touches his garment, immediately she is healed. Immediately the pain and the hurt and all the things that have isolated her and all the shame and all the guilt and all the things weighing upon her shoulders, immediately it is finished. But it doesn't stop there. And Jesus said, "Who was it that touched me?" Jesus is surrounded by a crowd of people desperate for something from him. He's urgently going to try to save the life of this 12-year-old girl for an important leader in the community. He's doing important work. And along the way, a nobody who's hurting and broken and desperate reaches out. And rather than being irritated by the interruption or angry that she would touch him, because for somebody who was unclean because of bleeding to touch somebody else, that new person would now be deemed unclean and unable to do the things they were supposed to do, unable to be in the presence of God, in the temple, and in the community of worship. They too would be an outcast. And rather than being embarrassed or angry or hurt by the fact that she would dare try to put Jesus in that place, he simply stops and says, "Who touched me?" And Peter says the obvious. "Everybody's touching you, Jesus. Like the whole crowd's pressing around you." In fact, he says, when all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds surround you and are pressing in on you." Like, obviously people are touching you, Jesus. We've got important things to do. Just keep on going. Press on. Don't stop. Don't be interrupted. Just do the thing you've set out to do, Jesus. But Jesus isn't like Peter. Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out from me." And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him, declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him. And this one line is what gets me and has been getting me for the last several weeks. When she saw that she was not hidden, there wasn't any way to hide her pain or her brokenness. There wasn't any way to hide the fact that it was her who touched Jesus. That she could have put him in this vulnerable spot. That she was the one who was interrupting him along the way. There wasn't any way to hide what she was going through. When she saw that she was not hidden, she shared with everybody, I did it, and here's why. Imagine the fear in front of a whole crowd of people who think you are the worst of the worst. Think you have no place or belonging. Say you don't matter. Your issues must be your fault. Your pain is too big. It's you who's the problem. And imagine in the midst of that owning, I did this because I'm desperate for you, Jesus. I'm desperate for something, anything to change. And you're my only hope. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Jesus is doing something really important. Has a reason to hurry. A 12-year-old is about to die. He has a reason to press on and ignore the interruptions and ignore the people around him. But he stops as he's going. And he sees this woman in her pain. And he says, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. While he was still speaking, someone from the ruler's house came and said, your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher anymore. Jesus was too late. He was too slow, and his pace was not fast enough. He allowed the interruptions to stop the work that this man so desperately needed, this one of importance and power and authority so desperately pleaded for. He allowed himself along the way to focus on all the wrong things. Like this woman who was a nobody to everybody, but a somebody to him. Your daughter is dead. Leave Jesus be. But Jesus, on hearing this, answered him, do not fear, only believe, and she will be well. And when he came to the house, he allowed no one to enter with him except Peter and John and James and the father and mother of the child. And all were weeping and mourning for her. But he said, do not weep, for she is not dead but sleeping. And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. I've been around a few dead people in my life. I don't know if you ever have. It's pretty obvious to tell when they're dead. It's pretty clear when their color begins to fade and their body gets cold and things are obviously, there's no longer life left in them. It doesn't tell us how long transpired, but long enough for a messenger from this ruler's house to recognize that she was dead and travel to where they were, and then to come back with Jesus. Some time had passed. It's clear that she is dead. And Jesus wasn't fast enough. But taking her by the hand, he called, saying, child, arise. And her spirit returned. She got up at once. And he directed that something should be given her to eat. And her parents were amazed, but he charged them to tell no one what had happened. I love this story of Jesus so much. He has important things to do and important places to go and important people to serve. And he's interrupted by a nobody. A nobody who could potentially make him unable to do the work he's supposed to be doing, unable to accomplish the things he's supposed to accomplish, unable to go where he needs to go. And this interruption for Jesus is an invitation to bring peace to a person who's hurting, love to a woman who is unloved, hope in the midst of the most hopeless of situations. And not only this, when he goes too slow for the world around him, and everybody says, she's dead. You missed your opportunity. You failed us, Jesus. You weren't enough in this moment. You couldn't do what we needed. Where were you? Jesus shows up again. To the woman with the bleeding, he speaks, "Daughter, your faith has made you well." To the child who has died, he speaks, "Child, arise." For you and for me in our life, if we want to encounter and experience God's goodness, I believe wholeheartedly we need moments where we too can be interrupted, where we too can see God at work, not in our schedule and our agenda and our plans and our control, but God at work in the world around us, which he deeply loves. And we need moments in our life where we can slow down enough to see God moving all around us. To stop fixating on all the urgent and the immediate and the important and the things pressing around us. But to know that there are people that God is bringing into our everyday life who are desperate for the hope and the love and the life that he offers. You and I, as Christians, to experience this life Jesus has for us, need to create space in our life where we can hear him speak. "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Child, arise." And we can receive from him what he is freely giving, his hope and his life in the midst of hopeless places. How do we go about creating a life where we're okay with being interrupted? See, Jesus knew what was before him. And that knowledge of what was before him, along with the knowledge of who went with him, gave him all the things he needed to not focus on the urgent and the important and the expectations of everyone, but to focus on the needs of those right there with him as he went. See, the knowledge of what was to come was a God who was faithful, who would do all that he had promised to do, who would heal and restore and make new what was broken. And the knowledge of who was with him was that he went everywhere where his Father sent him, and nowhere did he go without his Father, and he was never alone in all of his work. So whether he was in a boat and preaching or walking along the way or in a house with a 12-year-old who's died, his Father was there with him. And when his Father was with him, he would be okay. You and I can go about our daily lives at a slow and steady pace, one that recognizes interruption will happen, and maybe it's not a curse, maybe it's an invitation to something we never expected, something even better. We can go knowing what the end will hold, that our God will restore and will renew and will heal and will raise the dead, even if here and now we break a hip and we get Lyme disease and we suffer and we struggle and things don't go as planned. Even if here and now we are hurting and in pain, we know what's to come. He will one day make all sad things untrue. And this is our hope. And we know in all things who goes with us. For Jesus even says, "I will be with you always. I will never leave you nor forsake you." And as we walk through our day in and day out, you and I are invited to create space where we slow down enough to see him walking with us all the while, to see those who are hurting and experience his love for them. I couldn't help but crying this week as I read this story because I thought of just how lonely and isolated and hated this woman felt. And maybe how angry and disappointed this ruler felt. And for both of them, Jesus shows up. And he does what he promises to do. As you go through your week this week, who needs to be noticed, to be seen, to be comforted by you, and more importantly, by the Jesus who goes with you, who needs you to slow down enough that you can see them in their pain and acknowledge it. You and I only become those kind of people when we're okay with being seen first, with bearing all of our hurt before Jesus and all of our pain and all the things that are not yet and all the interruptions that irritate us, and laying all of those before him, saying, you alone see where I'm at and who I am and what I need. And our hope as Christians is that the very death of Jesus there on the cross was him pouring out his blood for our salvation. And in that place, he saw every hurt and every pain and every need you and I are going through. And we, in being seen, can slow down to see others, to love and to serve and to give them the same peace that Jesus gives us. Will you pray with me? Jesus, we ask that you would teach us to slow down. When life does not go as we hope or as we expect, when we exhaust all of our resources to fix our mess and it doesn't seem to work, when the urgent and the important press around us, begging us to ignore the needs right now, to focus on something bigger or better. May we see our brothers and our sisters, our coworkers and our friends, and even most importantly, our enemies. May we see them all as children whom you love, who are hurting and dying and desperately in need of your love. God, we ask that you would, for each one of us, help us today to be seen in our hurt, in our pain, in our disruptions, in all the things that have not gone the way we think they should. May we know that you are with us, that what lies ahead is the promise of the resurrection, the hope that all sad things will be untrue. And God, we ask that as we are interrupted, that we would respond as you do, with love and grace and peace. And now we pray, Lord, as you taught us to pray, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever.